This is episode 98 of the 99 Forever podcast. I'm Eric Friesen, and my guest tonight is making his fifth appearance on the podcast. He's the biggest Oilers fan in Australia, Chester Taylor. Chester, good to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's kind of wild. It's like 10:32 in the evening here, and it's like in the morning there, right?
Yeah.
I'm back in Saskatoon.
6:32, but hey, we're used to doing this by now.
Yeah, we try to we make it work, so it's the main thing.
Absolutely. And it's now been exactly 8 weeks since the Edmonton Oilers' heartbreaking loss in Game 7 of the 2024 Stanley Cup Final to the Florida Panthers. And, getting that close to winning it all and coming up just short was devastating. There's no other way to put it. But do you still consider last season to be a success for the Oilers despite losing in the final?
I do. We lost. We're 2 shots away from winning it all, right? So that was pretty much a big improvement from the past seasons. So I think it's a big. I know it hurts that we didn't win, but I think it's a big step for the team. So that's why I'm feeling really confident, and excited for next season, and I think this will be our year next season.
I mean, if you were to ask the players on the team, I'm sure they would say it wasn't successful because they didn't achieve their ultimate goal of winning the cup. But I think they should still be very proud that they delivered one of the best seasons in Oilers history, especially after that dreadful start to the year. The Oilers were the best team in the league for the final 70 games of the regular season, including that historic 16-game winning streak that stretched from December to February. And they advanced all the way to Game 7 of the final despite several injuries to key players. And according to Hockey Stat Head on Twitter, the Oilers had the third hardest path to the Stanley Cup in the salary cap era. So even though they didn't end up bringing the cup home to Edmonton, this team still gave us an incredible playoff run that we'll never forget.
For sure. It was a crazy season. As you mentioned a while ago, the tough start, the coaching change, adding some pieces during the trade deadline, added Adam Henrique and those guys. I thought Ken Holland did a great job there. And in the playoffs as well, we had to go through tough teams as well. Vancouver gave us a big fight there.
Yeah, they were in first place in the league at certain points during the regular season. Dallas was, in many people's opinion, the best team in the West. And, going up against the Florida Panthers, the 2-time defending Eastern Conference champions, and they had just won the President's Trophy back in 2022 as well. So, there were really, other than the first series against LA, there were no easy outs for the Oilers.
Yeah, that's right. After the LA, it was just it was a grind for the Oilers, It's good to get that revenge with Vancouver because first game of the season, they smacked us right up,
Yeah, well, they lost all 4 games in the regular season to them.
Yeah, that's right. So we beat them in 7 games. And then we had to face Dallas and 7 games with the Panthers as well. So, but look, we made the Stanley Cup Finals. As I said, we're 2 shots away. So I think it was still a successful season for the Oilers despite everything.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, if you go back 40 years, the Oilers were swept in the 1983 final by the New York Islanders before winning 5 cups in the next 7 years. So that team had to learn how to lose before eventually becoming a dynasty. And I think getting so close to winning it all last year will only motivate the current edition of the Oilers even more to come back and finish the job next spring.
Yeah, for sure. The Oilers, they've been through a lot of growing pains. So I think every team does. Like Florida, they went to the Stanley Cup Final 2 seasons ago, and now they made it back to the finals and won it. So hopefully that will happen to the Oilers as well. But I'm really hoping that this will be our year. And I like the changes that we and the additions we had to our team. Although we had a tough one lately with Broberg and Holloway leaving. But hey, we have some cap space to add some depth, so we'll see.
Without a doubt. And, before we talk more about the final, I just wanted to talk a little about Leon Draisaitl, because it was around this time 10 years ago that you and I first started talking on Twitter, shortly after the Oilers selected Draisaitl third overall in that summer's draft. And although the Oilers picked first overall in 3 straight drafts early in the 2010s, it wasn't until Edmonton picked Draisaitl in 2014 that they finally landed a true franchise player. Chester, I know we were both thrilled about the Oilers getting Draisaitl, but did you ever think back then that he would turn into the franchise icon that he's become?
I'll be honest with you. I know he was going to be an elite player he can be an elite player in the NHL, but as you said, franchise player, I didn't expect that. I'll be honest with you. I think he got sent down on his first year, right? Is it first year when he got sent down to back to juniors? And
he played roughly half the season, and then the Oilers worked out a deal for him to be traded from the Prince Albert Raiders to the Kelowna Rockets, because if they were going to send Draisaitl back to junior, they wanted him to go to a contending team. And he did end up winning the WHL championship and going all the way to the Memorial Cup final that year. So I think that was really good for his development. And like I said, before going back to junior, he did get in half a season of NHL experience as well.
Yeah. I didn't see that he was going to be a franchise player. He came in. He had his first full season. I think he got 77 points.
I believe it was 51 points.
51, and then the next one got 77.
And if you remember, he didn't even make the team out of camp in his second year. He started the year with the Oklahoma City Barons, and then, I guess by then they had moved to Bakersfield, and then came up after I think it was 10 games down in the minors, and basically has been in the NHL ever since.
Yeah, but he did hit the 100 mark in this first month. I can't remember. I think the first 2 or 3 when he hit the 100 mark.
Draisaitl for points?
Yeah, for points.
His first 100-point season was in 2018-19. So I guess it was his 4th full year in the league, but his fifth year in the NHL overall.
Right. But anyway, at the end of the day, it's a good signing by Peter Chiarelli. He signed at 8.5, 8 years with Leon, so it's all these years were all worth it.
Yeah, I mean, there weren't a lot of great moves by Chiarelli, but definitely locking up McDavid and Draisaitl long-term were his 2 best moves during his tenure with the Oilers.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, the ultimate fortune came when the Oilers won the 2015 draft lottery, giving them the right to select Connor McDavid first overall. But I don't think anyone at the time predicted that the Oilers would end up taking the 2 best offensive players in the world in back-to-back drafts. But thankfully, then GM Craig McTavish believed that Draisaitl would become a future superstar and that he was a guy that this team could build around. And now that he's 10 years into a future Hockey Hall of Fame career, I would guess he's panned out even better than McTavish expected back in 2014. I mean, just think about what he's accomplished already. He's won the Art Ross Trophy, the Hart Memorial Trophy, and the Ted Lindsay Award in 2019-20. He's a 5-time All-Star. He has 5 100-point seasons, 3 50-goal seasons. He recorded a career-high 128 points 2 years ago, giving him one of the best seasons ever by a European-born player. He just became the 3rd fastest player in NHL history to reach 100 playoff points last spring, behind only Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. And he's the only player in the last decade to record consecutive seasons with at least 50 goals and 50 assists. So he's easily one of the most dangerous dual threats offensively in the entire league. And we often talk about McDavid's pursuit of being one of the 3 or 4 greatest players of all time. But I think that Draisaitl also has a real shot at becoming a top 20 player of all time.
Yeah, for sure. But hey, did you see it coming that Leon will be this good?
No, I mean, look, you see his stats at the time. He had 106 points in his draft year in the WHL. So, I mean, being a 100-point player at 18 and a tough league to score in, you have an idea that should be a point per game player in the NHL. And I sort of thought that he would slot in as either the number 1 or number 2 center. Because remember, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was still very early in his career, and we didn't know how far he would progress. But at the time, it looked like, well, the Oilers are going to have a real 1-2 punch down the middle with those guys, because also this was before McDavid had come to town. But then Draisaitl just pretty much blew all of our expectations out of the water. And if anyone who thought that he was going to be that 75 to 85 point guy, well, I mean, he's just far exceeded those expectations.
Yeah, I mean, look, when he was in junior, I didn't expect that he was just good at scoring goals. I know he was a great passer, but man, scoring a lot of goals in the NHL, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I think it's fair to assume that he was going to be more of a playmaker than a goal scorer. But like I said, he's such a dual threat that, I mean, you could argue that he's equally dangerous at both. And obviously playing with McDavid on the power play, helps a little bit. But I think that Draisaitl also has the ability to be the best player in the world on any given night.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying that the only reason why he's getting a lot of points because he's playing with Leon, with David. But
I think that has been proven false over the years. Like, obviously, two great players playing together are going to benefit from that. But the fact that people think that there are some people that still think he's a product of McDavid, I mean, I think that has been proven false long ago.
Yeah, well, when he won the Hart, right? He took over when I think Connor got hurt that year,
I mean,
right?
He played 7 of his best games when McDavid was out of the lineup with that quad injury. And if you remember that season, he finished with 110 points. No one else in the league even had 100. Now, McDavid would have hit the century mark if he had been healthy, and probably would have been closer. And that was also the first pandemic year where the season was cut off at March 12th, I think. So it was only a 71 game regular season. But still, I mean, you look at what Draisaitl did. That was an incredible year for him. And I think the year that he really established himself as one of the top 3, top 4 players in the game.
Yep, that was the year. You're exactly right. As you know, he's my favorite player. Man, I really wanted him to go, like, during the awards, like in Vegas. He didn't get to experience that because of the COVID.
Yeah, it was all done over Zoom.
Yeah.
So he didn't get to have the proper, experience where he goes up on stage and accepts the award. But I mean, that's the reality of it. There was a whole season, basically, I guess even a season and a half with no fans in the buildings. So they lost some of that too. And, it's too bad that even though they didn't have an injury, that players like McDavid and Draisaitl were limited to seasons of 56 or 64 games just due to the pandemic, and to lose games in their key years, it's just they'll never get that back. But they still put up incredible point totals those years. And while it's been a great offseason for the Oilers overall, there is still one piece of business left to take care of, and that's signing Draisaitl to a long-term extension. However, GM Stan Bowman did confirm recently that talks have begun between the Oilers and Draisaitl's camp, and there's no reason to believe that a deal won't get finalized soon. Chester, just before we move on to talking more about the final, what's your prediction for Draisaitl's next contract?
I'll go with the 14 to 14.5 mark, 8 years.
I think that's a fair estimate. I mean, realistically, Draisaitl could pretty much get anything he wants, and I've always believed that he would spend his entire career with the Oilers. He's playing for a legit Stanley Cup contender. He's extremely tight with this group, and perhaps more importantly, there's only one city in the world where he can play with Connor McDavid, and that's in Edmonton. So I expect that there will be a contract announcement soon after he gets back to Edmonton in early September. And I think it will be an 8-year contract worth $13.5 million per season. But like I was saying, in reality, Draisaitl could basically get any number he wants, and he definitely deserves a major pay increase after being one of the most underpaid superstars in the league over the past 7 years. He probably should get $14 million, as you were saying, but I think he'll leave a bit on the table. And while $500,000 might not seem like much, when you're as tight to the cap as the Oilers are, that extra little bit of cash could help a lot down the road. So I think he will be the highest paid player in the league for one season in 25-26 before McDavid raises the bar again the following season.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's a big chance too that he'll take less. I think, look, playing with Connor, they're like their best friends. So I think they're gonna, talk, they're gonna talk it out. And
Yeah.
for sure, I have a feeling that both of them would like to finish their careers in Edmonton. And they're
And
already legends. They're gonna be an Oiler legends in the future. So it's a
and
good prediction. If
I think the same thing. I don't think McDavid's ever leaving either. And as soon as Draisaitl signs his long-term extension, that will be even more of a signal that McDavid will follow suit and do the same thing next summer.
Yeah, I mean, for sure they're talking. I mean, look, I'm gonna sign 8 years. So if Connor says, yeah, I'm with you, But hey, some people are even saying that will Leon just take 3 or 4 years because we don't have much youth in the team because
Well,
they're saying that everyone's old.
I think just because Austin Matthews did that in Toronto, that some people think that might be the new way for superstars to approach contracts in that they take a shorter term deal, wait for the salary cap to go up, and try and cash in on another big contract 4 years down the line when the salary cap will probably be upwards of $100 million. So I don't see Draisaitl doing that though. From any of the insiders that I've listened to, Bob Stauffer, Frank Saravelli, they've all basically said that Draisaitl's only interested in an 8-year deal. So I would figure that he's probably going to take the guaranteed money on a long-term deal instead of trying to cash in again down the road. And like I said, he'll probably still get another contract after this because he's only going to be 34 when this one, or I guess no, it would be
36.
he'd be older than that. Sorry, he'd be because it'll
36
start at 29,
or
and yeah,
37.
it would
Yeah.
go till 37. So yeah, and if he wanted to play a few more years, he could play till 40 if he wants. But to have that kind of long-term security, I think is something that he'll definitely want to grab. And also with this program that they're building now, and that he sees that there is an opportunity to win maybe 2 Stanley Cups in the next 5 years, uh, especially like I said, with playing with your best friend in Connor McDavid and the best player in the world. I can't imagine him wanting to go anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, all along, Frank Serval was just like he doesn't see Leon leaving because like
No.
you have the best player in the world in your team. He's your best friend. Why are you gonna leave? So and you can make history in Edmonton. So yeah, but who do you think will from the team right now will be an Oiler until the end of their careers?
Ryan Nugent Hopkins for sure. And I mean, he's
Hmm.
eventually going to break Kevin Lowe's record for games played and seasons with the team. I think Darnell Nurse could as well. I mean, it depends how long he plays, but uh, despite being a lightning rod for criticism in oil country at times,
Yeah,
I would say that, Darnell Nurse, aside from having his long-term deal that's with a full no movement clause, he's also extremely tight with McDavid and Draisaitl too. And as long as as long as Nurse is here, that just increases the likelihood that McDavid will be here too.
yeah. I think Nurse will have a big year next season. That's
Yeah,
that's
I
that's
expect him
what
to
I
have a
feel.
bounce back year too. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a bit of a down year for him both offensively and defensively. Although he did really start off with good defensive metrics earlier in the season, it kind of faded a little bit down the stretch. But yeah, I'm expecting him to have a big bounce back year too.
Especially with a full year with Paul Coffey. I think
Mhm.
he'll have a big not a big I mean he'll have a bounce back year.
For sure. All right, so let's dive into the Stanley Cup Final, and I want to just go back to Game 6 of the Western Conference Final first, when the Oilers beat the Dallas Stars 2-1 at Rogers Place to capture their NHL best 8th Clarence S. Campbell Bowl and first since 2006. Chester, you started cheering for the Oilers in 2011 after they picked Ryan Nugent Hopkins first overall, so you weren't following the team during their 2006 Cup run. I just want to know, what was it like for you to watch the Oilers make it to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time as a fan?
Oh, it's can't explain. I was just really happy. Sometimes there are times that I was like I don't want to say I got teary-eyed, but I was just really happy. Like,
I don't think anyone would
all,
blame you if you got teary-eyed. There's definitely
all the
Oilers fans
years
that have
of being
shed
an Oiler
tears after
fan,
this. Yeah.
yeah, since 2011, it was a bit rough. We were always the first pick, and we had
Yeah,
the
you
first pick that
really
even
entered
if,
the fandom at a rough time. You came in right in the middle of the decade of darkness.
yeah, getting Yakupov for the first pick. And where is he right now?
Although
But
he
hey, I
was
got
still supporting the Oilers during the playoff run. I don't know if you saw that. He posted on Instagram that he was cheering for the
yeah,
Oilers.
yeah, yeah, I saw that.
Once an
I mean,
Oiler,
and
always an Oiler, right?
we got a picture with Yakupov, remember, in
We did.
Edmonton, in Rexall. Yeah,
The only time
got
that you've ever been to Edmonton in Canada, for that matter, you got to
yep.
meet Yakupov and get your jersey signed by him.
Yeah, he signed my Eberle jersey that time. So he seems like a good guy, but it just didn't work out in Edmonton. But yeah, it's been tough. And then we got Connor and Leon, 14 to 15 draft. Then we made the playoffs, and we had some painful moments during the playoffs. And yeah, here we are. We reached the Stanley Cup. I was just so happy for the team last season. They've been through, especially, I mean, Connor and Leon, they've been through a lot as well. So I'm just happy for them that we made it all the way to the finals.
Oh, for sure. And, I've always said that the Oilers' Cinderella run in 2006 was my best experience as a hockey fan. But the Oilers' Cup run this spring was maybe even more magical. And hopefully the team will be back in the final in 10 months and have the 2025 playoffs end with a parade through downtown Edmonton.
Yeah. Do you think this will be the year they'll win it
Yes.
all?
And I mean, I've said that the last 3 years that I thought this was the year, but I think the team's better than ever, and now they're playoff tested, and there's a lot of lessons that they've learned over these last few playoff runs. So if they can put everything all together, I believe that this will be the year that they get it done.
So you're saying this with Holloway and Broberg leaving, can you say the team is better than the last game, last season during the last game of the Stanley Cup Final?
Well, I mean, up front, they're definitely better. The
Oh
the
yeah,
the
for sure.
additions of
Yeah,
Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson,
Arvidsson.
bringing back Adam Henrique on a cheap deal. I think that those moves definitely make the team better, replacing guys like Warren Fogle and Ryan McLeod. They also were able to add one of the top prospects in all of hockey, in Matt Savoy, who's also an Edmonton area kid. And I mean, he's just got tremendous potential. And eventually, I think he'll end up on the wing with either McDavid or Draisaitl. And if they can have a skilled guy with 30 goal potential who is making under 900,000 a year, those are the kind of value contracts you need when you have players making as much money as McDavid and Draisaitl are going to on their next deals. So yes, I think that they are a better team on paper. They've taken a step back defensively. I mean, they've lost Broberg, Desharnais, and Ceci this offseason and replaced them with, I mean, I think Ty Emerson, who they got from San Jose in return
He
for Cody Ceci. I like the defensive metrics that he has. And, he was the defensive defenseman of the year in the AHL a year ago. So, I mean,
he
still
intrigues me a
fairly
lot,
unproven.
Emerson.
What's that?
He intrigues me a lot,
Yeah.
Emerson. I think this guy's going to be really. I think I'm not going to say he's going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be a good NHL defenseman.
And then Troy Stetcher is a serviceable D-man. He might be playing a little higher in the lineup than you'd like on the second pairing, but he had good numbers with Darnell Nurse in a small sample size last season. So I think he could probably hold on to that spot until the deadline if he had to, when the Oilers would obviously want to make a significant upgrade before they go on a playoff run. But right now, as the team is constructed, I think it's good enough to hold down first place at least until February, as I said, and then they'll definitely want to make their one move. And I think really the only area that they're really going to address at that point would be bringing in a surefire top four defenseman. If they were able to find another Matthias Ekholm, that would be fantastic. I don't know if they're able to get the 2025 version of him somewhere around the league, but I guess we'll have to see how all the teams are in the standings before we know who's going to shake loose.
Yeah, look, if there's one thing we did get in this with Holloway and Rober leaving is that cap space.
Yeah, I mean
We can,
And look, they also picked up a second and a third round pick for them as compensation for not matching the offer sheet. So,
And Jake Fisher, right?
yeah, I mean, he's more of a long-term prospect.
Yeah.
I would
Yep.
put him as a iffy to ever make the NHL, but you never know. But definitely the draft picks that they acquired could be used as a trade bait at the deadline.
But when Doug Armstrong tendered offered Holloway and Broberg, what was your prediction? You think we were going to match both
I
for
mean,
one?
I went back and forth on, it's easier to match Holloway and let Broberg go because Holloway could eventually grow into that top 4 spot or that top 6 spot. And also the 2.2 cap hit isn't as much of an overpay. And then I also went back to, the Oilers are already not overly strong on defense, and it would suck to lose yet another defenseman this offseason. So, like I said, I bounced back and forth, but ultimately I thought they would probably match one and not both. And Stan Bowman elected to let them both go and take the draft pick. So we have to just believe that he and Jeff Jackson know what they're doing. And so far, Jeff Jackson has given us no reason to doubt him. All his other moves this offseason look like surefire moves. So I believe that the team is headed in the right direction with him at the helm.
Yeah, well, when they made some moves, like they traded Cody Ceci, picked up Podkolzin. So I thought there was like, might.
I mean, these are some
both.
cap-saving moves. Podkolzin coming in sort of fills that Dylan Holloway spot, and actually his goals per game in the NHL is actually better than Holloway's. So it's still yet to be determined who's going to turn out to be the better player at the NHL level. They're both only 22, 23. And probably
Podkolzin?
Yeah,
I think he's 24.
He was a 2019 draft pick. So
okay. He was picked 2 picks ahead
Holloway
of
turns
Broberg,
23
right?
in the fall. Yes, he was 2 picks after he was the 10th overall pick. And, he's not going to live up to that draft status. But if he can become a solid third liner that scores 15 to 20 goals a year, that would be good.
Yeah, I'm hoping, just a new environment will, a fresh
could
start
maybe
for him
help
will
him,
do good
especially
for him.
because he's been splitting time between the AHL and the NHL the past couple of years. So now he's no longer waiver exempt. So if the Oilers do decide to send him down, he would have to clear through waivers. So I think he's going to have a real opportunity to make the team out of camp.
Yeah, look, we got Podkolzin, we got Matthew Savoy. Hopefully that can replace Dylan Holloway, his departure, and hopefully Ty Emberson will be something, will be solid for a team.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying that they have the same skill as Broberg, but it's tough to lose Broberg. But we just gotta trust, as you said, we just gotta trust Jeff Jackson and Stan Bowman with this.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into the final now. And we're going to go through each game in the series. And we'll start with game 1 of the 2024 Stanley Cup Final, where Edmonton was all over Florida with a 32-18 shot advantage, but the Panthers prevailed 3-0 on the strength of a shutout by Sergei Bobrovsky to take a 1-0 series lead. Chester, Bobrovsky was absolutely massive for the Panthers in goal, and the main reason why they were able to win. But considering the Oilers were clearly the better team in game 1, were you still optimistic about the Oilers' chances to win the Cup?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I was. Even before game 1, I was like, I was really confident we're gonna. It was our year. I was really confident we're gonna win it all. So, and she said, game 1, we dominated that game. That was a W. I mean, if not for Sergei, maybe we've beaten them like maybe 4-0, 5-0. I mean, we really played good that game.
Yeah, I mean, the Oilers had some glorious chances. McDavid forced a turnover early in the first period that led to a point-blank chance for Zach Hyman that he was robbed on. Adam Henrique and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins were each denied on breakaways. The Oilers went 0 for 3 on the power play, including a 4-on-3 advantage late in the second period. And head coach Chris Knobloch even loaded up the top line with McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman for the entirety of the final frame. But that trio, who had combined for 29 goals through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, just couldn't find a way to solve Bobrovsky that night. However, according to Natural Stat Trick, the Oilers had an 18-6 lead in high danger scoring chances in game one. So I was confident at the time that if the Oilers brought that same effort in game two, that they would earn a split on the road, because even for an elite defensive team like the Panthers, McDavid and Draisaitl can only be held off the score sheet for so long.
Yeah. Look, the game one was really, we got goldie that time. Like a game before that game against Dallas in game 6, it was us.
It was Stuart Skinner who stoned the other team. Yeah.
And then it just happened to us in game 1. And then game 2, we didn't play that well. So we were down 2-0. That was really Florida's game in game 2.
Yeah, we're going to get into that right now. And the Oilers did finally get on the board in game 2 as Matthias Ekholm made it 1-0 in the opening frame. But the Panthers responded with 4 unanswered goals to come away with a 4-1 victory and a 2-0 series lead to open the final. Chester, after falling behind 2 games for the first time in the 2024 playoffs, were you starting to panic that the Oilers had run into an opponent that could shut them down? Or did you think it was only a matter of time before they broke through?
No, I didn't. I didn't panic. I was still confident that they're going to get the job done. We had a good start that game. Like, I think Ekholm scored for us, gave us a 1-0 lead that game, and then Florida just took over after that. And going back to Alberta for game 3, I was just confident that we're gonna, hopefully tie the series when we get back there. Because I know our fans are really gonna be loud, and it's Edmonton's different during the playoffs. It's just wild there. So I was just so excited for the team to get to Edmonton and get game 3 going. And I was just confident all throughout after game 2 that we're going to get the job done.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, first off, we knew the Panthers were going to come out with a better effort in game 2 after getting thoroughly outplayed on home ice in game 1. And I thought the Oilers did a good job of weathering the storm early on, including killing off a 5-minute major penalty when Warren Foegele was issued a game misconduct midway through the first period. However, they couldn't get anything going on the power play again, going 0 for 4. And for a team like the Oilers, who generate a ton of offense with the man advantage, that's just unacceptable. They have to bury at least one of those opportunities. And the Panthers are among the dirtiest teams in the league, so we knew they were going to take penalties. And the Oilers just couldn't make them pay in those first 2 games. It cost them, especially in game 1, which was there for the taking. And while it wasn't ideal to be heading home down 2-0, you're never really in trouble in a series until you lose at home. And I fully expected that the Oilers would elevate their play in front of a raucous home crowd for game 3 at Rogers Place, which was the first Stanley Cup Final game that the Oilers had played in Edmonton in almost 18 years to the day. So I wasn't overly panicked either, because this team has shown the ability to overcome tremendous adversity all season. So I just looked at it as another opportunity for the Oilers to prove their doubters wrong.
Yeah, I mean, when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, right? You always think that, the team's going to bounce back, despite the loss they had in game 2. I was just confident. I'll be honest here. I was just confident all throughout the finals that even though we were down like 3-0, some of my friends are sending me messages, it's over. I said, relax. We got this, because we got 2 of the best players in the world. And I was just positive and confident all throughout.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what they went through in previous series, right? In a series against Vancouver, they lose in the last minute of play in game 5, and now they have to win back-to-back games to move on to the Western Conference Final. Well, they did that. Then you go on to the next series against Dallas, and you're down 2-1, and in game 4 on home ice, the Oilers are trailing 2-0 early, and it looks like it could be lights out, but they come back and they win that game, and they win 3 straight games to move on to the Stanley Cup Final. So it's not like they haven't had their backs to the wall in the past, and every time that they were in a situation like that, they were able to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we were really tested all throughout this playoffs. Vancouver, Dallas, we were really tested. And in game, can you say that you were heading into game when we lost game 3? Were you still confident?
I
Or
mean,
you're like kind
it's
of
pretty hard to be at that point that they're going to come back, to be honest. I mean, when it was 3-1 in 2006 against Carolina, even that seemed like a far way to come all the way back. But being down 3-0 was really tough. We'll get to that in a second, but it's when you're in that kind of spot, there's only been a few teams in NHL history that have recovered from that type of a deficit. And I mean, in game 3 back in Edmonton, the Oilers trailed 4-1 with 6 minutes to play in the third period before Philip Broberg and Ryan McLeod each scored to cut the deficit to 1. However, the Oilers' comeback bid fell just short as the Panthers won the game 4-3 and took a commanding 3-0 series lead on the road. And Chester, while the Oilers made it interesting with those 2 late goals, they just weren't sharp enough for a team that needed to be playing desperate hockey, were they?
Yeah, I was just so frustrated at the time. I remember watching that game 3 game. We tied it in the second period, and then Florida scored three straight goals. Like, it was 4-1, and then we tried to push back with, as you mentioned, with Broberg and McLeod scoring in the third period. It was not enough, and I was just so frustrated, and yeah, I mean, I was just like, I said, this is our year. I was just like, we can't let this slip away. Or it's just so hard to win in the NHL.
It is.
It's
And
just so hard to
sometimes
get into this. Yeah.
you look at this team, and I think they often play their best hockey when they face some adversity and when they do have a challenge to overcome. But sometimes I do wish that they didn't wait until they're in a tough spot to really ratchet up their play a little bit. You'd like to see them, get ahead of it a little more often than having to fight and claw all their way back. It's not to say that they can't, because when you have the dynamic offensive players that the Oilers have, they're never out of a game. This team probably has just as good of a chance, if not better, than any other team in the league to mount a comeback, even when they're down by 2 or 3 goals. But like I said, you want to be in a situation where you're jumping out to those type of leads more often than having to come all the way back and, just at the last minute, pull off the comeback and see if you can either win it late or force it to overtime. So, yeah, I would just say that I think that is still one of the things that the Oilers do have to get better at. Aside from, facing a 3-0 hole in the series, I think what made that loss even more frustrating is that the Oilers beat themselves. There were times when it looked like Edmonton was in control, but then they started making some bad plays and careless mistakes, and Florida capitalized. And the Oilers allowed, like you said, 3 goals in less than 7 minutes in the second period, and that ultimately cost them the game. And you can't be making mistakes of that magnitude against a team as deep as the Panthers and expect to win. Stuart Skinner posted his 3rd straight sub-900 save percentage, and even though I don't think that he was at fault on all of those goals against, Florida was decisively winning the goaltending battle in the final. And when you have one goalie who's stopping everything and the other guy who is letting in far too many, that's why the Oilers were in the spot they were at. And for the 3rd straight game, none of their big guns were able to find the back of the net either. They also went 0 for 3 on the man advantage, making it 9 straight power plays where they failed to score. However, the Oilers did manage to get more than one puck past Bobrovsky for the first time in the series, and McDavid also picked up assists on both of Broberg and McLeod's goals and recorded his career-high 34th point of the playoffs. And while that wasn't going to make Oilers fans feel any better about the team being on the brink of elimination, there were maybe a sliver of hope starting to get in there that Bobrovsky looked beatable for the first time in the series.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, the first 3 games, Surrey just outplayed Skinner. It looks like it's going to be his series.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we tried to, it's just frustrating because like, as you mentioned, like there were games that it was our game, but but as you said, careless turnovers and everything just tried killing us that in the series. Yeah, and then but after the game, I was just so frustrated, and I was just when I went to listen to Connor's interview, say, look, we just gotta win one and drag them back to Alberta.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking of it, yeah, it's still possible. We could still win this. We got this. We got this. I was just, yeah, I was just so having Connor McDavid in the team. That's what makes make you feel good even though you're down 3-0. If there's one guy that can pull the team out of this, it's Connor McDavid.
And in Game 4, the Oilers stayed alive with a dominant 8-1 win at Rogers Place. Dylan Holloway scored twice, Connor McDavid had 4 points, and Stuart Skinner turned aside 32 of the 33 shots he faced in the victory. Chester, we didn't know at the time that the Oilers were going to come all the way back and force a Game 7, but just how exciting was it for you to at least see the Oilers get one win in the final and avoid being swept on home ice?
It was exciting, going into Game 4, I said, look, all I want is just get one win, get one win for Oil Country, So we don't want the Panthers to sweep us. So all I was asking for was to get one win, and we'll see what happens. And yeah, they did.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the Oilers had never lost a Stanley Cup Final in their own rink before, so just avoiding that was great. And I mean, it was an incredible night. The Oilers put on a great show for their fans. It was one of my favorite Oilers games of the entire year. And for anyone who's been a fan of this team since 2006, they've experienced a lot of long seasons where the Oilers were basically out of playoff contention by November. So you can't take a run like this for granted. Even with McDavid and Draisaitl, it's not a guarantee that you're going to be in the Stanley Cup Final every single year. And, although the odds were still stacked against them, I think picking up that first win in such a convincing manner gave the fan base some hope that maybe they still had an outside chance to win the cup. And despite trailing 3-1, the Oilers and Panthers were actually tied with 12 goals apiece thanks to Edmonton's 8-goal outburst in Game 4. Now, obviously, they weren't going to continue to score 8 goals a game for the rest of the series, but I think beating the 2-time defending Eastern Conference champs that badly at least helped them regain some offensive confidence. And the Oilers also scored on the power play for the first time in the final. So overall, just a great night in the city of Edmonton for Oilers fans.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, after Game 3, it was 3-0. The Panthers were up 3-0, but I thought we should have had like 2 wins in that 3 games, right? We played great in Game 1. That should be a win.
They outplayed them in both of them, so it had to even up at some point.
So I mean, they know that they can beat this team. So, and then they beat the Panthers Game 4 with a big margin. So it's a moral boost for their confidence, and it was a good advantage to go into Game 5 with no just thinking to drag back to Alberta, back Game 6 for Alberta.
Pressure. I mean, you don't want to say that there was no pressure at that point, but it had probably shifted a little more onto the Panthers side than the Oilers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Chester, after putting up just 3 assists through the first 3 games in the final, did you expect that McDavid would eventually have a big night offensively?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, expect him and Leon and the rest to have big nights, but I mean, during this time with the Stanley Cup, your big guns have to step up and show what they're capable of, and yeah, McDavid and Draisaitl and the rest, Nuge and Hyman, and they were great, especially McDavid. I mean, it just shows how badly he wants to win this for the city of Edmonton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, over the past 9 seasons that he's been in the NHL, teams have learned that you can't stop Connor McDavid. You can only hope to contain him. And credit to the Panthers because they did a relatively good job of containing him offensively for the first few games at least. But with the Oilers facing elimination, McDavid produced one of his best playoff performances, picking up a goal and 3 assists in the decisive victory. And with his first helper of the night on Darnell Nurse's goal, McDavid notched his league-leading 30th assist of the playoffs. McDavid joined Wayne Gretzky as the only players in NHL history to record 30 assists in a single playoff year. McDavid also joined Gretzky as the only players in NHL history to record 130 assists in a combined regular season and playoffs. And with his third assist of the night setting up Holloway, McDavid broke Gretzky's record for the most assists in a single playoff year with 32. And then to make the night even more historic, McDavid joined Gretzky as the only players in NHL history to record consecutive 170-point seasons, including playoffs. And Chester, as you already alluded to, there was that quote that he had after the game, probably the most famous quote of the entire playoffs, where he said, "It doesn't matter if you score 8 goals or you score 1. You just have to win 1 and go to Florida, do a job, and drag them back to Alberta."
Yeah, I mean, I was really confident they're gonna get it done when they won that game 4. It was just they already knew that they could beat this team. As I said, they shouldn't be down 3-0. And boy, heading into game 5, McDavid was just unreal that game. Like
Yeah.
he really, wow. I mean,
Took his game to another level, really.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna go home no matter what. We're going back to Alberta.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you expect from the best player in the world in a pressure cooker situation.
Yeah, we're just so lucky he's an Oiler, so.
Absolutely. And while McDavid made all the headlines with his record-breaking night, Holloway was also excellent in Game 4. He recorded his second multi-goal game of the playoffs, and obviously he's now moved on to the St. Louis Blues after the Oilers declined to match the offer sheet over the offseason. But I just want to know, what can you say about Holloway stepping up in a big way at 22 years old in a must-win game?
I mean, it's great to see. I mean, you could see he's about to pop. I mean, I think Holloway is for me, he's a top 6 player. I mean, he can play with McDavid and Draisaitl, and he showed it in the playoffs. I mean, it was great. He was really good for the team. It's just unfortunate he went to St. Louis, So I was, even though we had some good additions in the offseason, but I really thought that he could push for a top 6 role, because I'm really high on him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we saw Holloway reunited with Draisaitl after a brief demotion to the third line. And one thing we know about Draisaitl is that he loves to play with big, fast players, and Holloway fit that description perfectly, which is why he probably would have been a great running mate with Draisaitl for years to come. And I mean, he scored a key goal in the first period off the rush to make it 3-1, giving the Oilers their first multi-goal lead in the series. It was also only their second lead of any kind at that point in the series. And then in the third period, he drove hard to the net and tapped home the 7-1 goal for Edmonton on a nice one-touch pass from McDavid. And Holloway also added an assist himself later in the frame. So all in all, a great game from Holloway. And like we already have kind of talked about, it's just a shame that he signed with the Blues, because I think he would have become a full-time top 6 player in Edmonton eventually if he would have stuck around. Now, maybe it wouldn't have happened this year with Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson coming in. So he was probably blocked a little bit from securing a permanent spot in the top 6. But you could see that he was starting to trend in the right direction. And if you look at how Holloway had played in other leagues, whether it was the AJHL or the NCAA, it always took him 1 year to sort of adjust, and the next year he really popped. And now that he had been with the Oilers for parts of 2 seasons as sort of a splitting time between the NHL and AHL, I thought that this coming year he would probably be a full-time third line player. And then maybe the year after, you start to see him really pushing, let's say, Victor Arvidsson for a spot up on the top 6. But unfortunately, he's now moved on. It's a tough break because, a former first-round pick for the Oilers, a kid that they put several years into, developing, and just it seemed like he would be a good fit for this team. I always thought he had a similar playing style to Taylor Hall, and to lose one of the few young forwards the Oilers had on this roster, and also, Ryan McLeod went out this offseason, so that's Holloway and McLeod. You're losing 2 speedy forwards right there. Just a bit of a tough break that he didn't end up staying with the club.
Yeah, well, I thought I thought I think when we got Jeff Skinner and Arvidsson, I thought that Holloway would be out of the top six, but I was pretty confident he will get into the top six in this season, maybe second half of the season. I was just really high on him, I mean,
And I mean, let's
I think
also keep in
he was just perfect for Draisaitl, I
yeah,
mean, the type of player he is, it's speedy.
that's
That's what Draisaitl
that's
likes.
who he plays well with. And the other thing we have to remember is that the Oilers have been pretty healthy for the last couple of
Yeah.
years, and the chances are that someone is going to get hurt at some point. And I mean, we let's hope that it doesn't happen, but the odds say that eventually, you're going to have a year where one of your key players is going to miss significant time, and that would have been a chance for him to probably move up the lineup. And maybe if he just thrived in that spot, he'd never come off of it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough break. I mean,
And did you know that? Sorry to cut you off. And did
no,
you
go
know
ahead.
that Draisaitl and McDavid were training when they found out about
Yeah,
the offer
I heard
sheets?
that he was actually they were
Yeah,
training in Toronto with Robert Thomas,
that's
who
right.
is also a
Byfield,
member
I
of
think
the
Byfield's
Blues.
there too.
Yeah, and
I
I
think
think
Quentin Byfield's
Thomas
training
said
with
in an
them too.
interview that it was kind of awkward being around them
Yeah,
when the news broke. So yeah, that was
they were not
that was
happy about
interesting.
it.
No,
Yeah.
all right. After posting a dismal 686 save percentage through the first three games against the Panthers, Skinner returned to his stellar form from the Western Conference Final, where he allowed just 4 goals in the final 3 games of that series. Chester, Skinner experienced plenty of highs and lows during the 2024 playoffs, but he always followed up a bit of a rough patch with a strong performance in goal, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, boy, if there's any goalie that since I started watching hockey, I mean, who has a big like a roller coaster, right? Like it's just up and down for Stewart. Like every time he has bad games, he just finds a way, to bounce back, and he really put a strong performance for the Oilers. It's just amazing, like because some goalies like when they lose a lot, when they keep like they're in a losing streak, it's really tough. Like of course mentally they get like it's really draining for them. But Skinner, like he just finds a way, like
Yeah,
like he's
definitely.
not gonna give up, and I want to be that guy.
Yeah, and I mean Skinner was sensational in Game 4, which he needed to be. There was no other option for him, and
Yeah,
even though it was a blowout win for the Oilers, Skinner still made 32 saves, including a massively important stop on Carter Verhaeghe's one-timer off a 2-on-1 rush just after the Panthers had scored to get within one. So the Oilers' early 2-0 lead could have been wiped out in about a minute. But Skinner came back with a huge save at a crucial moment and allowed his team to not only stay in the lead, but extend their lead to 3-1 before the end of the first period, as we talked about with the Holloway goal. And as far as Skinner's up and down play in the playoffs, we have to remember that last year was only his sophomore season as an NHL starter. And in his first 2 seasons between the pipes, Skinner has already played in 6 playoff series, winning 4 of them. So I think having 35 games of playoff experience this early in his career will serve him well, both in the short term and the long term, because the Oilers will be counting on Skinner to keep backstopping this team to deep playoff runs. And this is an incredibly deep roster they have now going into the 2024 season, and they're hinging their playoff hopes on him between the pipes. And I'm hoping that with a couple of those long runs that he's gone on already will eventually, end up in a Stanley Cup celebration.
yeah. I mean, it was a good experience for Skinner, to experience his ups and downs during the playoffs and in the Stanley Cup. I mean, Bob outplayed him at the start, but later on, he was great. I mean, he was able to match Bob in the Stanley Cup final, and it's a good experience, especially it's gonna make him feel confident heading to next season, and he's the guy right now, because last season we still had Jack Campbell. You don't know who's going to be one, or he's going to be one, or the second guy, or the backup. So, but now he already solidified that number one spot for the goalie. So I'm high on him, and I hope he makes Team Canada too. So the Four Nations Cup.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're still probably about 5 months away from that tournament, but it's exciting to
Yeah,
think that we will get to see Oilers players in a best on best tournament. So hopefully we'll see them there, and maybe a couple other guys like Victor Arvidsson or Matthias Ekholm on
Ekholm.
Sweden. So yeah,
Yeah,
couple guys should be there. So maybe we'll get to see 6 players overall representing at the tournament in February.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
All right. In Game 5, the Oilers picked up right where they left off a few nights earlier, jumping out to 3-0 and 4-1 leads in the second period. However, the Panthers fought back to make it a 1-goal game in the third period before McDavid buried the empty netter to record back-to-back 4-point games in a 5-3 victory for the Oilers. Chester, McDavid put on a legendary performance with 2 goals and 2 assists to help the Oilers stave off elimination for the second straight game. In your opinion, was this possibly the best game of McDavid's career?
Boy, I mean, David has a lot of unbelievable games, but I think this is the best game that he has played because it's in the biggest stage. It's in the Stanley Cup, and it's a do or die. And putting that kind of performance just shows what player he is. So, and he was unreal that game. Just he made me. That pass to Corey Perry, I remember it. I mean, I was just shouting and I was jumping, like I was like shocked how the hell he did that. So I was like, wow.
I mean, that's one of those once a year type plays you see from McDavid.
Yeah, I mean,
he dazzles us on the regular basis, but usually once or twice a year, there's a really special one that we remember. And it's like the goal against Columbus back in 2016 when he returned from his broken collarbone, or the goal in 2021 on Kevin Lowe's jersey retirement night against the Rangers. It's going to be one of those goals that we'll be talking about for years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I even like last week, I was watching it on YouTube. It's just like, wow, I could watch this forever, I think.
It keeps you busy during the summer when you're anxiously waiting for hockey to come back.
David highlights. That's what, yeah,
I could do that anytime. And I mean, like, look, McDavid had 5 assists in a playoff game against the Kings last year too. So on the surface, it might seem bold to say it was arguably the best game he's ever played, especially when you consider all of the incredible regular season performances he's had as well. But I think there's a case to be made that Game 5 might actually be the best game he's ever played for a big reason, like you pointed out, the stage that it was played on. I mean, putting up 4 points in the Stanley Cup Final against that level of competition with his team on the verge of elimination, it at least has to be in the conversation for the greatest game of his career. And with his second period goal, McDavid recorded his league-leading 40th point of the playoffs. McDavid joined Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux as the only players in NHL history to record 40 points in a single playoff year. And with his empty net goal, McDavid became the first player in NHL history to record consecutive 4-point games in the final. And that gave him 11 points in the series as well, which was just 2 points shy of Gretzky's NHL record for the most points in one final that he set back in 1988. It was also the 4th playoff series in the past 5 where McDavid recorded double digits in points. And the only one where he fell short was against the Canucks when he had 9 points. And in my opinion, McDavid already had the Conn Smythe Trophy locked up prior to Game 5. But after registering another 4-point game, including one of the most spectacular assists you'll ever see, as we talked about on Corey Perry's power play goal in the second period, McDavid was undoubtedly the most valuable player of the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, he was already for me, he was already the Conn Smythe that after Game 5. I mean, it was just unbelievable during the playoffs.
And with those two signature performances against a team that was built for playoff hockey with a Vezina Trophy winning goaltender, it's incredible what he was able to accomplish in Game 4 and 5.
Yeah, and he's like drawing comparisons to Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky. I mean, those are the two, one of the best players in the game. So
I mean, anytime you can get mentioned in the same breath as them, it's just that you know that you're in rarefied air.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't wait, to see his career play out when he. I don't know if he's going to reach Gretzky's stats, but he's going to draw a lot of comparisons.
I don't think he even needs to. Like, I think that Gretzky's numbers are so astronomical that no one will ever even come close to him. Like, Ovechkin is approaching the goal scoring record, But if you want to look at Gretzky's assists and point totals, even for a player of McDavid's ilk, it's going to be almost impossible for him to even get close to those. However, I do believe that McDavid will be second all time in assists and points when his career is over, and probably have the second most individual awards as well. And there will be a lot of categories where he's second only to Gretzky. And like we said, we've watched 9 years of his career. Hopefully he plays until he's 40 and we get 13 more years of Connor McDavid in Edmonton. And it's just it's exciting to see it. And I think one of the best things is that the last 2 seasons have been his best seasons offensively. So he's just continuing to get better at age 25, 26, 27. So hopefully we'll see the best season of his career coming up in 2024-25 when he turns 28 in January. And McDavid wasn't...
Sorry to cut you. And do you think that, I know you're a big Gretzky guy.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
your number one favorite. But when you think that when McDavid's career is over, do you still put Gretzky, the number 2 McDavid for you?
Yeah, I mean, Gretzky will be my favorite forever. His spot is cemented there. I mean, the name of the podcast we're doing right now is the 99 Forever Podcast.
That's why, there
Gretzky's
you go.
Honor. But I guess the one thing is that I never got to watch Gretzky in his prime. That's what I was going
to say. Yeah.
I started following the NHL in 1996. And at that time, Gretzky was 35 years old. He had just signed with the Rangers, I should say. So I can remember the last few years of his career. And even though he led the league in assists in 2 of those 3 years, he wasn't at the level that he was back in the 1980s when he was at his peak. So I don't really remember that era. I mean, I was born.
You didn't watch a game of him?
I was born. Oh yeah, I did. But I was born 5 months after the Gretzky trade.
Yeah.
So I mean, even by the time I'd come along, he was already with the LA Kings, and he was still winning scoring titles at that point and putting up huge totals. He led the Kings to the Cup in '93 when I was 4. But just, he'll still always be my favorite because of just my dad's influence and, turning me into a Gretzky fan and everything. But for McDavid, the one thing I'm grateful for, and the reason he'll probably always be my number 2, I'd even now put him ahead of Ryan Smith, who was my childhood hero, and I did watch the majority of Smith's career. The reason I have McDavid number 2 now is because I've been able to watch this once in a lifetime player right from the start. From the day he was drafted.
That's right, yeah.
I've missed 1 game of McDavid's career that I haven't watched live. So it's been, and he didn't get any points in that 1 game. The Oilers were shut out 3-0 by the San Jose Sharks. So I've literally watched every single point he's ever recorded in the NHL. And that's something I didn't get to do with Gretzky. So I'm glad that I now get the opportunity to do that with McDavid. And McDavid wasn't the only Oiler breaking records in the final, as Evan Bouchard also tallied 3 assists in the Oilers' Game 5 victory. Chester, after putting up 82 points in 81 games last season, did you think Bouchard could raise his game to an even higher level in the playoffs?
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a matter of time, since he took over that the guy in the power play
from Tyson Barrie.
From Tyson Barrie.
Who's now with the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, he signed a PTO, right?
No, he signed a 1-year contract.
Yeah, but he was a PTO first, right?
He came into camp on a PTO. But I would have wished that he went somewhere else. But good for Tyson for continuing his career. Hopefully Sam Gagner lands somewhere as well. That's one thing. We do always say once an Oiler, always an Oiler. So when these guys do move on, even if it is to a rival team, you hope that guys who made a positive impact in Edmonton and were fan favorites are able to at least extend their career. So good for Tyson. He's a really likable guy. I know he was good friends with McDavid, and that was tough.
The guys
for him
really like him.
But, looking back at the time, I was disappointed that Barrie got moved in that trade for Ekholm. But now that it's been about a year and a half since the trade, thinking about it, Barrie, a first-round pick, and their prospect Reed Schaefer, who was picked first in the first round the year before. I mean, that's a steal of a deed for the Oilers because they were able to get Ekholm, who's probably a top 15 defenseman in the league. So
he was perfect for Bouchard too.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best all-around defensemen in the league. But sorry, go ahead. Back to Bouchard.
Yeah, going to. Oh, sorry, with the Gagne. He's with the Canes, right? Trying out as well.
He was
PTO.
released. He got released from
Oh,
his
you got
PTO
released already,
yesterday.
right?
Yeah. So
Okay, with Bouchard, yeah. See, I mean, it's just a matter of time that he was gonna pop in. Boy, he had a strong season, and he just carried on in the playoffs. He was just great.
yeah, I
He was
mean,
just, I mean, yeah, he was just making smart plays, and that shot, man, that slap shot that he
might be
had,
the
that
best slap
bomb,
shot in
man.
the NHL now.
Yeah, for me it is. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I
It's in
can't
the
be
top
biased,
two or
but
three
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. It's up right up. It's right up there.
And after having only 2 points in the first 4 games of the final, Bouchard was bound to pick up the offense at some point in the series. I mean, he was over a point per game in the 3 previous series leading up to the final. And with his first assist in Game 5, Bouchard recorded his 30th point of the playoffs. He joined Paul Coffey, Al McInnes, and Brian Leach as the only defenseman in NHL history to record 30 points in a single playoff year. His second assist was a Bouch bomb that deflected off Hyman and into the net, which happened quite a few times last season. And, it's great to have a guy like Hyman who's willing to stand in front of those shots and take it off
Yeah.
a foot or off a knee cap or, the glove or whatever to go into the net. I mean, that just shows the balls that guy has to stand in front of a
Yeah.
100-mile-an-hour slap shot. And with his third helper of the night, Bouchard broke Coffey's NHL record for the most assists by a defenseman in one playoff year with 26. And similar to McDavid in the 2022 playoffs, I think that he's now reached a level of offense in the postseason that will be the standard for him going forward. And although he's not as highly regarded for his play on the other side of the puck, I also thought he played really solid defense in the third period when the Oilers were clinging to a 1-goal lead. So you can't ask for much more from your number one defenseman in an elimination game.
Yeah, and I think he's gonna work on that as well. He's gonna improve, and it's gonna get even better. That's why he's going to be very expensive. We're going to pay him a lot of money next season after next season. So
yeah, I think he's eligible to sign on January 1st, an extension. So
what's your prediction for his next contract?
I mean, there have been reports that he's going to be looking for as much as $11 million.
Wow.
I think if the Oilers could get him to $10 million on an 8-year deal, you take that all day. And he will have arbitration rights next summer. So I would try to lock him up as quickly as possible, because what if he does put up 100 points next season? I mean, that's a great problem to have. I hope he does. And if he gets 100 points, we're probably talking about McDavid and Draisaitl both recording career highs in points as well. But I would try to get Bouchard locked up as soon as possible and not wait until July 1st. If he's willing to do a deal in season, that should be the focus of the team, because his price tag is only going to go up and up. And if he has another huge playoff year, what if he has 35 points again in the playoffs next year or something like that, and the Oilers win the Stanley Cup? I mean, at that point, if the Oilers win the Cup, I really don't care. Pay him whatever he wants, because you got the ultimate prize. But I would say trying to sign him as soon as possible should be the priority for the Oilers.
Yeah, I agree. If you think that he's going to be part of it moving forward, just try to lock him up as early as you can, because they're not going to get cheaper.
For sure. And following one of his best games of the playoffs in Game 4, Skinner was even better in Game 5, stopping 29 of the 32 shots fired his way. Chester, even with his team facing elimination, Skinner never seemed overwhelmed by the moment, did he?
Nah, yeah, I mean, he was just really great. Like, he just knows how to bounce back, and when the team really needs him, he's there. I mean, back against the wall, and he was just great. I mean, it's really amazing what he did, especially with the Dallas series and heading into the Stanley Cup. He gained the confidence and the momentum that he brought into the Stanley Cup from this Dallas Stars series. He carried. Although I can't. Bob outplayed him in the first few games, right? Because Bob was unbelievable the first game one.
He was the only reason why they won. I mean, the Oilers didn't score a goal, but they had some point blank chances to score in that game. And just if they didn't have an all-world performance from Bobrovsky, the Oilers probably are coming back to Edmonton, at the very least tied 1-1, and they probably would have been up in the series 2-1 after 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, when the big games come, Skinner's, he shows up. So it's really great to see.
And as we talked about in Game 4, Skinner has shown the ability to rebound from a few bad games throughout his young NHL career, and he really believes in a positive mindset. I can remember a game in November of 2022. My dad and I went to this game. It was actually when Ryan Smith was enshrined into the Oilers Hall of Fame. And they played the New Jersey Devils that night. The Oilers had a 3-1 lead in that game, and they ended up blowing it, losing 4-3. And the third and fourth goals were scored only 7 seconds apart in the third period. And that could be so deflating for a young goalie to let in 2 goals in such a short span and cost his team the game, even when it was like early in the season. I think that had dropped them to a 7-3 record or 7-4 record at the time. So it was maybe the 10th or 11th game of the season. But he said after the game, and I still remember this, saying, I'm going to learn from this and be better from it. And it just showed such maturity from a young goaltender. And I mean, I look at him even in his life, like he's a married man with a child and a second one on the way now. I mean, most guys at 25 years old aren't at that stage in life. So I think he has a lot of maturity on and off the ice. And I mean, that was just, he doesn't shy away when things go wrong. And that was a complete role reversal from Game 1, where the Oilers badly outplayed the Panthers, but just couldn't buy a goal. And in Game 5, the Panthers were the better team for probably the majority of that game. But, that was, I think you can say that was probably their second best game of the series after Game 2. But Skinner stood tall and made some key saves when he needed to, and gave his team a second straight victory in the final. And personally, I loved watching him prove his critics wrong, because in both the West Final against Dallas and the Cup Final against Florida, many hockey experts were saying that the Oilers, Skinner could cost the Oilers the series. And ultimately, Skinner had superior numbers to both Jake Ottinger and Sergei Bobrovsky head-to-head in the playoffs. And that just gave me even more optimism that Skinner has what it takes to win a cup as a starting goalie in this league.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the Vancouver series, he lost his job. He almost lost his job.
He did. Well, Pickard, he did for 2 games.
Yeah. And permanently, but Pickard really played great when he changed
He
Skinner.
came in, steadied things down. He won 1 game, lost 1 game. And I think little Skinner mental reset for Skinner helped a lot, because he came back and was able to win Game 6 and 7 for the Oilers to reach the conference final.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. Like coming back and, facing all the adversity that he got from that Canucks series, because he really played great at the start. And then he got Pickard took over. And then when he got back, he just like, I'm not going to go back to where I am. I want this net, So he was really solid.
All right. In Game 6, 5 different Oilers players scored en route to a 5-1 win at Rogers Place as they evened the series 3-3. And with the victory, the Oilers became the first NHL team to force a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final after trailing 3-0 since the Detroit Red Wings in 1945. Chester, we knew the Oilers had the 2 best players going into the series in McDavid and Draisaitl, but what can you say about the role players stepping up for the Oilers in a must-win game?
It's great to see, I mean, especially in this sport, if everyone's clicking, it's hard to beat the team that everyone's clicking. So it's good that the role players showed up in Game 6. And it was a great, it was a big game. If we ever win that game, I thought after that game, I thought we were going to win. That's how confident I was, when we won Game 6, as we had all the momentum and coming back from 0-3.
You're also a big NBA fan too, though. So maybe you can speak to how much more important is it to have depth pieces step up in hockey as compared to basketball?
Well, it's different kind of. It's pretty different, because in basketball, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's how can you say? I mean, if you have a strong starting 5, and if you have it's good to have a deep bench. But if you have a strong starting 5, at least 2-3 people out of the bench, you're good. But in hockey, I mean, if everyone's clicking, it's hard to beat a team like that. In the NBA, it's good. I mean, in every sport, depth's always good. But in the NBA, if you have a solid five and you not have a much bench production, you could
Right.
still possibly win the game.
And
Like
I
it
mean, what
shows
if
like
you
with the
have
Golden
two
State
players
Warriors,
on the
right?
level of McDavid or Draisaitl?
Sorry, what was that again?
And if you
Say it
have
again.
two players on the same level of McDavid or Draisaitl in the NBA, does it really even make it less important than if you have support pieces?
Um, well, because like with in hockey, right? If you have two of the best players in the game, no matter how good you play, but if your goalie's not playing well, it's
Yeah, I
tough to
mean,
win, right?
think back to the
But
Miami Heat days with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh.
mhm, right?
Now, I don't remember the rest of the players on that team as well as maybe you do, but when you have those
Yeah,
three players, it seems like it probably, because they play such a large portion of the game, that it becomes
yeah,
less important of what the support players on the team are doing when you have those three guys up front.
yeah. Well, they had the support as well. Like Mario Chalmers was big for them during that cup. I mean the championship.
Right.
Um, but look, I mean, let's just put it this way: for both the NBA and AHL. So if you have if you have the depth, um, you have a big chance of winning it.
Oh
You know what
yeah.
I mean? But like going back to the Golden State Warriors, when Kevin Durant joined the Warriors, they didn't have that much depth out of the bench, but they still won it. But there are five of them. They're solid. That starting five was solid. Number five. You know what I mean?
Yep. And
Yeah.
I
But
still believe that to win a Stanley Cup, you need to have a really strong first and second line center. And if you
mhm,
have two star players in those roles, as well as a strong starting goaltender, that's a great fundamental. Like that's the foundation you need to have. And beyond that,
yeah,
then you can fill out the rest of the roster. But with McDavid and Draisaitl as your two starting pieces, that's something that the Oilers had years ago. And I mean, going back to the depth of team now, I mean, despite having 7 players with at least 18 goals and 10 players with double-digit goals last season, some of their critics still suggested that the Oilers were a two-man team. And to me, that's a ridiculous thing to suggest in 2024. Maybe you could make that argument 5, 6 years ago, but with how they filled out this roster now, the Oilers are a deep team top to bottom. And if it only took two great players to win a championship in the NHL, then the Oilers would have already won multiple cups by now. But in Game 6, with their season on the line, McDavid and Draisaitl combined for just 1 point in the game. However, 12 different Oilers players picked up at least a point in Game 6, including Stuart Skinner, who registered his first career playoff point on Darnell Nurse's empty net goal late in the third period. And Warren Foegele was the only player who had multiple points in Game 6. They had a strong first period. Skinner gave them the saves they needed. Their penalty killing was excellent once again. So, I mean, it was a full team effort to pull off one of the biggest win, probably the biggest win for the organization in 18 years.
yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone was clicking. I mean, especially that Mark Brown line. I mean,
Yep.
they were great. I mean, they were awesome.
And
So
hopefully we'll get to see
like,
that line continue to be together
yeah,
this year.
the
Now,
Henrique.
maybe there will be some moving around from those guys on the third and fourth line, but that's a trio that works, and let's hope that they can stay at this level now that Connor Brown's healthy, because for most of last season he was playing at, I don't know, maybe 50, 60, 70% health, and
Mm-hmm.
it all started to click for him later in the year, and we saw the type of player we were more expecting Brown to be all last season come playoff time. So now that he's had a full season to train, as opposed to last summer when he was just rehabbing his leg injury, let's hope that line is one that can hit the ground running.
Yeah, and also Hyman. Hopefully, well, if he can get back to close to 50 goals,
Yeah,
that's a
I
win.
mean, I think even if he puts up 40 this year, that would still be
Yeah,
great. And
for sure.
because I think that McDavid's assist total will still be right around the same. Even if it comes down a little bit, the goal total should go up. So let's say Hyman scores 10 goals less than he had last year, and he drops down to 44. Well, I think McDavid is probably going to score 15 to 20 to 25 more goals more, depending on the year. He had 32 last season. I could see him easily being back in the mid 50s. So right there, that's over 20 goals more. So the Oilers might not see much of a drop off in terms of overall team goals, even if Hyman dips a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if Hyman will always be with McDavid. I mean, he
For the most
solidified that
part,
spot.
I think that is going to be a duo that will be together most of the time. I would still be interested at some point to see Skinner get a look with McDavid on top line.
Because I can't see Hyman going. I mean, he can play with Draisaitl.
Oh yeah,
for
sure.
He played with Draisaitl before, but I can see Nuge moving more than Hyman.
That's a fair point too. Look, they're going to try different things. I do think that for the most part, we will see the McDavid, Hyman, Nuge line together, as well as Draisaitl with his two new goal-scoring wingers, and he finally has some top flight scoring players to play with. No disrespect to guys like Ryan McLeod or Warren Foegele, but Arvidsson and Skinner are in a different class. These are guys who've scored 30 goals in the league multiple times each. So that's another reason why I'd like to see such a effective 5-on-5 scorer like Jeff Skinner get a chance to run with McDavid for a few games. But I think ideally you probably want to have him starting with Draisaitl, and then you can just sort of keep the chemistry together that you already have on the McDavid line, which was the best line in the league last season. And
it's just so easy to move Nuge as well because he can play the center.
Oh, he can play anywhere. I mean, you could drop him down to third line center and bring Henrique up to the wing, depending on if you wanted to do that or not. So they have so many options just because they have a lot of centers on the team.
Yeah, and Chris Knobloch, I think he's gonna go like if we need a goal in the end game, I think he's gonna put Draisaitl with Hyman and Nuge with Skinner and Arvidsson. So some options there.
Yeah, definitely. And this game reminded me a lot of the Oilers' Game 6 victory over the Carolina Hurricanes in the 2006 Stanley Cup Final. It was a similar situation. The Oilers were down 3-1 in the final. They fought back to tie the series 3-3 with a dominant 4-0 win on home ice in Game 6, setting up a winner-take-all matchup against another team from the southeastern United States. And with 5 minutes remaining in the third period, the fans at Rogers Place were chanting, "Let's go Oilers," and "We want the cup." Chester, where would that rank for you among your favorite moments from the Oilers Cup run last spring?
Definitely up there. I mean, I was just so when they won Game 6, I was just so proud of the team. I mean, coming from 0-3, and you could see the oil country. I was looking at the crowd. It's just like everyone's just like, it's just the city's alive. You know what I mean? So it's
the city revolves around the team. So to only be now one win away from winning their first Stanley Cup in 34 years. You expect them to celebrate like that.
Yeah, I mean, people people say it's just crazy in Edmonton when the Oilers wins, when they win the cup, it just gets really crazy. Like people everywhere outside the Rogers Place, party everywhere, lots of noise and sounds there.
Yeah, and I remember last spring I had two of my other favorite guests from Brazil on the podcast. Gabriel and Diego, and one thing that we talked about was that there are other fan bases and cities around North America that might be close, but I don't think that there's any other city that matches the excitement level as Edmonton come playoff time. Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, these fan bases are all super passionate as well, but Edmonton, I think, is in a league of its own when it comes to fan support around playoff time. I mean, it's everything to the city. And for me, it was my second favorite moment behind only the Oilers winning the Western Conference Championship. I'd probably even call those two victories 1A and 1B, just because getting to the final in the first place was such a big deal. was the first time in the McDavid era that they had reached that point. And even though the Oilers didn't win the cup last year, you would think they did from the way the fans were celebrating after Game 6, well, both in the arena and in the moss pit. And I mean, there were plenty of other great moments along the way, including some highlight reel plays, overtime winners, NHL records, and feats that hadn't been accomplished in more than 30 years. But those two wins in particular, the Game 6 win over Dallas, to
that
claim
was my
the
favorite too, Eric.
the Clarence
That
S.
moment
Campbell
when
Bowl.
Draisaitl and McDavid hug each other in the cup ceremony, that was the best. Yeah, it was just
amazing
one of
moment
the
for
best
those two
moments,
guys.
yeah.
And you just think of like all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into that in the years to get to that point. Just for those two guys to finally realize this moment that they're going to be playing in the Stanley Cup Final. And then, of course, like I said, this Game 6 win that reminded me a lot of their win in 2006. I mean, those are the ones, the two moments that I'll remember best from this playoff run 40 years from now.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that I remember when they were hugging each other back in Dallas. I was in tears. I mean,
because you weren't following the
I've
team
seen
in
it all.
06, so this is now your
been
first
following
time.
them.
Yeah.
I mean, all the pain, the losses, the playoff exits that they had the past couple of years. It's just awesome to see.
I mean,
that,
for years we just
the
wanted
Stanley
the
Cup
Oilers to
Final.
even make the playoffs, and now here we were watching the Oilers about to move on to the Stanley Cup Final, and I mean,
but now we got to win this coming season.
Yeah. And
it's our time.
Following the victory in Game 6, it did set up a one-game showdown in Game 7 back in South Florida, where the Oilers unfortunately came up one goal short, losing 2-1. Chester, the Oilers came as close to winning the cup as possible without getting their hands on it. Just take me through what that night was like for you. And did you shut off the TV as soon as the game was over? Or did you watch the cup celebration? Just take me through the night.
I was just devastated after the game in Game 7. I was like, we had chances like that. Bouchard just hit the post. What if it goes in? It will just change the whole thing. We were just so close of winning it all. It's just. Yeah, it was just really painful. It's just, it's just so hard to get there, to the Stanley Cup, and you're 2 goals away from winning it all. It's just so painful. And I mean, I still watched the ceremony. I watched the Panthers raising their cup, but I was just like, damn, that was supposed to be the Oilers. I was really, devastated.
Just because you know how much more the Oilers fans would have appreciated, but also, I mean, would have been such a storybook ending to
coming
an
down
incredible
from 0-3.
season.
Yeah,
Hollywood couldn't have written a better script for everything this team went through this year. And I mean, for me personally, with 1 second left in the game, I shut the TV off. I couldn't take it personally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just. Yeah, it overwhelmed me. I do remember in 2006 crying after they lost to the Hurricanes in Game 7. This time I didn't cry, but it still hurt a lot. I think the reason why this one is as bad as it hurt, why it didn't pain me as much as 2007 is because, or 2006 I should say, is because back then that was a Cinderella run that was going to be very difficult to repeat, whereas I believe this team will be back. So it's still incredibly painful, but you feel more confident that this team has the ability to go on future runs, and that it's not going to be just a one-time thing where everything went right for 2 months and the Oilers were able to go from being an 8th seed and get within one win of winning the cup. And then after the Panthers jumped out to a commanding 3-0 lead in the series, the Oilers had the chance to win their 6th Stanley Cup and pull off arguably the greatest comeback in North American team sports history. And on the last podcast I recorded after the West Final with Brian Swain, I said that I thought the Oilers might be a team of destiny. And when you think of everything that this group overcame last year, from being tied for last place in the NHL a month into the season, to trailing in each of their 2 previous playoff series, to overcoming multiple injuries to key players in the postseason, and now the Edmonton Oilers had a chance to complete the perfect ending to one of the most memorable Stanley Cup finals ever. I truly believe they were going to do it. But unfortunately,
me too, man.
they came up 1 goal short of winning hockey's ultimate prize. And as we know, hockey is a game of bounces, and the Oilers had a golden opportunity to score the go-ahead goal in the second period, but it didn't go in, and the Panthers skated down the ice, and Sam Reinhart scored the eventual game winner, and that's tough to take it. But at the same time, like I said, it's virtually impossible to repeat that run back in 06, especially after Chris Pronger left. But this run, they were able to bring back not only the majority of their core pieces from that 2024 run, but add to it, with the likes of, re-signing Connor Brown and Adam Henrique, and bringing in Jeff Skinner, Victor Arvidsson, and trading for a top prospect in Matt Savoy. So I think that the Oilers actually got better this offseason, which should only increase their odds of being back. And I mean, this team expects to compete for the Stanley Cup year after year. They've played in 9 playoff series over the past 3 years, which is second only to the Panthers. And I think the team, now that they've made these significant upgrades, have the most dangerous forward group in the league, and they will be back in the final next year.
Yeah, I'm confident that they're going to be back. I think this is the deepest that Connor and Leon.
Oh yeah,
the top 6 that they ever had. I think
it's the deepest roster the Oilers have had since the 1980s.
Yeah.
Since Gretzky left in '88, for sure, this is the deepest roster they've had.
Yeah, so I'm pretty confident they get it done, and they have cap space going to the trade deadline.
Yep.
So
especially with Evander Kane, who will be on LTAR. And despite the heartbreaking loss in the final, McDavid won the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most valuable player in the playoffs. McDavid joined Gretzky, Mark Messier, and Bill Ranford as the only players in Oilers history to win the Conn Smythe Trophy. McDavid also became only the second skater in NHL history to win the Conn Smythe Trophy on a losing team, and the first since Reggie Leach in 1976. Chester, McDavid was deserving of the award. He finished with an astonishing 42 points in the playoffs, 10 more than anyone else, and 20 more than anyone on the Panthers. However, there was some controversy over McDavid not coming back onto the ice to accept the award. Instead, he chose to stay with his teammates in the dressing room. What did you think of his decision not to come back onto the ice and accept the award from Gary Bettman?
I think he was just really hurt. I mean, I just think that I think he just wants a cup. I mean, he just wanted to be with his teammates there. The pain that they're all feeling. So he just wants to be there for them. And I just think that it's just he doesn't really care that much.
No.
He just wants to win. He just wants the cup.
He wouldn't have cared about the Conn Smythe Trophy even if they won the Stanley Cup. So in a losing effort, he's not going to care about it even more. He's never been a player that's driven by individual accomplishments, even though he has the most of any active player. I mean, he's even ahead of Sidney Crosby in NHL awards and 100-point seasons and all these different milestones. But when you think about it, although he is such a great offensive player, and that he is going to just continue to rack up incredible numbers and awards throughout his career, all this guy wants to do is win. He is a player that cares only about team success, and that's something that's very similar to Wayne Gretzky, who also was a player that just had remarkable season after remarkable season, just accumulating all these individual honors, but it was the team success that he was really driven by. And this will be something that will hopefully motivate him going into the next season, that he's going to come back hungrier than ever.
For sure.
And so speaking of points, it will probably result in the best offensive season of his career. But once again, that's just going to be what he hopes to be a side note on the ultimate prize, which is, winning the Stanley Cup. And I think that he has the team to do it now. But as far as for him not coming back out onto the ice to receive the Conn Smythe Trophy, I don't blame him at all. I think that anyone who's just kind of piling on with the criticism of him for not coming back out, they're looking for reasons to criticize McDavid, because to me it doesn't make sense why he receives as much flack from outside of Edmonton as he does, unless you're a fan of a direct rival. Sometimes I think when you just reach the top of your game, you become a lightning rod for criticism. And this guy has done everything on the ice and off the ice to give himself the best chance to win a Stanley Cup and compete every year. And you can see from the videos they showed on Oilers Plus, and we're going to talk about another video in a minute, but just for him to be in that spot where his heart's just been ripped out. He's just suffered the most difficult defeat of his hockey career. And you want him to come back out onto the ice to receive a trophy where he's going to get booed mercilessly by the Panthers fans.
For sure.
I mean, in what world does it make sense for him to come back out for that? So, yes, he was deserving of the Conn Smythe Trophy, but when you see how he was in the dressing room, I mean, that's what a leader really does, is be with his team. And he even said himself he wouldn't have gone back out there for $1 million. So, and just to wrap up the show, I wanted to get your thoughts on the new Amazon Prime docuseries called Face Off Inside the NHL. And the final 2 episodes of the 6-part series will feature behind-the-scenes footage of the Oilers during the 2024 Stanley Cup Final. And I'm sure you've either seen some of the videos online already or heard people talking about it. So do you think you'll watch it eventually, or would it be too painful to see the Oilers lose Game 7 again?
Yeah, I'll watch it. Although I know I was, because I saw McDavid crying. It was painful for me to see him crying. But I'll watch it just to see how McDavid. Just want to see how McDavid during his lows, to see how how he handles it as a captain. So just on that part, but I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah, I'll probably see it at some point too. I still haven't gone back and watched Game 7 since, or the highlights from the game since it ended. I mean, to me, it's just too soon. I've resisted the urge at every chance to not see that game again. And there's been times where I've thought about it, like looking at some of the plays where they were so close to scoring, but to this point, I still haven't. And maybe that's when I'll finally look at it, is when I watch this series. But the 2 clips that have sort of been circulating on Twitter are the one after Game 2, where he's yelling in the dressing room and sort of getting the guys fired up that, that wasn't good enough, was sort of the line. That wasn't good enough. We need to dig deep. And you sort of see a new side of McDavid that we've never seen before, because we've never had that access to inside the dressing room after that big of a game. And then, of course, the other one was after Game 7, where McDavid literally broke down into tears, and you see Ryan Nugent-Hopkins sitting next to him, who looks almost numb to it at that time. And it's just kind of rubbing him on the back of the neck, saying, hey, it's going to be okay, buddy. And I mean, when your whole life is hockey, when you devote as much of it to the game as McDavid does, I mean, you can see how he would break down. They had just went through a 2-month war, going through 4 different teams to reach this point, playing 25 playoff games, following an 82-game grind in the regular season, and to be that close, 2 shots away from winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, you can't get any closer to it, and then having your dreams snatched away from you. So I think anyone in that situation who cares about the game and cares about winning as much as he does would have that type of reaction. So if there was anyone who ever doubted his commitment to winning, that just kind of showed that he's not a player who cares about individual statistics, although that seems to be the perception that some people have outside of Edmonton. But this is a guy who only cares about winning, and let's hope that they never have
He's
this
got
happen
everything
again.
already. Just a cup.
I mean,
He just needs a Stanley Cup. He's got everything ready.
I always thought that the first time he got to the final, he wouldn't let that opportunity slip away, and they came so close. Like, yeah, it's very difficult to even to still talk about, but I know that this team will be back, and you just look at what they've put in place now. This is as good of a shot as they've ever had going into this season. So hopefully, Chester, when we're doing this podcast again, maybe 9 or 10 months from now, we're talking about the 2025 Stanley Cup champion Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, that'll be great. And I'm pretty confident they'll get this one.
And we're just right around the corner from the new season. Let's just end on a bit of a more positive note than that. Just how excited are you to finally get going again, even after it's been the shortest off season in Oilers history?
Oh, I'm so excited. I think this will be the year. I just can't wait to see McDavid and their guys race that cup. Look, the Panthers been to the finals and two seasons ago, and they fell short and they came back. And hopefully we could do that. What they did.
Yeah, I mean,
we had the taste of being defeated in the final, and then we know what it takes, and yeah.
I mean, look no further than the Oilers themselves in 1983. Best team in the league, reached the Stanley Cup Final, got swept by the New York Islanders, who were the 3-time defending champions and just knew how to win. The Oilers had Gretzky, who was in his prime at the time, or coming into his prime, and they had just a stacked team full of future Hall of Famers, but they ran into an Islanders team that was playoff tested and just knew how to get it done on the grandest stage, and they had to learn how to lose before they learned how to win. And the following year they came back in 84 and beat them in 5 games. So I don't know if the Oilers and Panthers are going to meet up in the Stanley Cup Final again, but I do believe the Oilers will get back there, and this time that experience of now having lost in the final will have them even better prepared to make sure they get the job done.
By the way, during the handshakes, Matthew Tkachuk told Connor.
I saw that clip as well.
You saw that, yeah? I said, we'll see you in the finals again, bro. And then Connor said, sounds good to me, bro.
And I think he told Stuart Skinner as well, you guys will be back next year. You're too good. So still not a Tkachuk fan. That's
but he's been
at least passing along some kind words, I guess. But it's what it said is true though. I mean, the Oilers are going into the season, they are the odds-on favorite to win the Stanley Cup. Virtually, the majority of experts, I would say, they are picking them as the consensus favorite to win the Stanley Cup in 2025. So that doesn't mean it's a guarantee, but I don't think that there's a better team in the league right now than the Edmonton Oilers. So let's hope that's what ends up happening in June of next year.
Yeah, let's hope. And let's pray for the boys, Hope they get this one.
Get it started right away on Wednesday night here. Go Oilers. All right, Chester, just before we call it a night, where can people follow you?
Just on Twitter. Chester Taylor, _ Chester Taylor on Twitter, and on Instagram as well.
All right, everyone, please go give Chester a follow. And man, I just want to say thank you again for being on the show. I've been hosting this podcast for over 5 years now, and this is the first time I've had the opportunity to talk about the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Final. And there's no one else I would have rather had on this episode for this specific podcast than yourself. So thanks for joining me for it.
Oh, pleasure, Eric. Always, I'm grateful that you always, invite me to your podcast, and I really enjoy it.
Absolutely, my friend. We'll do this again soon. Have a good night.
For sure. Thanks, Eric.
So for Chester Taylor, I'm Eric Friesen. This has been the 99 Forever podcast. We're out.